Can you imagine being 30 years old and diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer in a state far away from your family and friends, your caregivers, the people you need most in a time of such disruption in your life? Today on Patient Conversations with Leah, we have the honor to speak to Clara, who was just that girl. So today I would like to introduce you to Clara. Clara, we are very excited to have you here and to hear just how this diagnosis came about and those first early weeks.
Yeah. So first of all, thanks for having me. And
Oh, you're
second of
welcome.
all, I was living in Colorado Springs for the past 8 years, and it's so beautiful there, and I loved it there, and all my really good girlfriends are still there, and I was dealing with a lot of health issues last year, which I thought were related to running because I was an avid runner, and I was having this like low back slash hip pain, and so I ended up getting an MRI, and it showed a herniated disc, and so I was like, okay, let's just do physical therapy and work this out. And I did, but it wasn't getting any better. And then they did like all these other like modalities. They did steroid injections. They tried to treat the sciatica, like all these different things. And nothing seemed to work. And so I eventually had another MRI and it showed a weakened bone marrow signal. And that kind of raised a red flag for the doctors. And then I got some lab work done. And that was alarming as well because it showed I had severe anemia and my hemoglobin was dangerously low and almost needing a blood transfusion. And so they referred me to a cancer center in Colorado, but I couldn't get in for about 2 weeks. And so there was a day right before, like about 5 days before the end of that 2 weeks, where I couldn't stop throwing up. And I called my mom, and I had thrown up like 5 or 6 times. And I couldn't even keep down water or Pedialyte, crackers, nothing. And so my mom was like, I think you need to go to the ER. So I drove myself to the ER. And I remember sitting in the ER, like crying because I knew something was horribly wrong. And this old lady came up to me and she was like, are you okay? And it just like made me like bawl more because I just felt like something's wrong. And I hope that they can tell me, like, give me an answer. And so I finally got a CT scan at the ER. And when that came back, I was in like this triage area and they cleared everybody out. The ER doctor was like, is there anyone you want us to call? And that's when it hit me. And I was like, crap. And so I called my boyfriend at the time to come to meet me there. So I had someone, sitting next to me, and they said, we're so sorry, but you have cancer and we're going to have to admit you, but we don't have a cancer floor. And so we're going to transfer you to a bigger hospital and go from there. I was just kind of like, oh my gosh, what's going on? And, I was like, I remember asking the ER doctor, what's going to happen to me? And she couldn't give me like a clear answer besides just like the next steps for that day because she was just, a regular, emergency medicine doctor, not an oncologist. And so I got to the bigger hospital and they started prepping me for surgery. And I was like, what? And they're like, you have two huge masses in your pelvis. And so they were going to have the like OBGYN, like surgical team perform that surgery. And so they prepped me for surgery. And then they told me, oh, wait, we're not going to do that because they had realized that it was everywhere. And so they didn't want to do surgery on just one area because even getting that out, it wouldn't make a huge difference. And then that's when I went to I did a biopsy on my breast, and my parents finally got to Colorado and to the new hospital to meet me. And they were able to, meet with the doctors and come up with a plan. And we decided to go to Iowa for treatment. And the reason for that being my mom had stage 3 colorectal cancer about 4 years ago. And so we really liked her oncology team. And so we requested the exact same oncologist to treat me. And we got him once I got to Iowa. And unfortunately, once we got to Iowa, I was okay for a couple days. And then I had another hospital stay and I got really, really sick. But at least I was kind of on their radar at that point because we were having trouble like getting connected with them. And so once I was in the hospital, we got connected and got all set up with appointments and everything. And I guess there was a problem with getting the breast biopsy information or results or whatever to Iowa. So they did a liver biopsy. And that's when they determined it was originating in my lungs. So I know I have lung cancer, but it has spread to my lymph nodes, my liver, my breast, my bones, and my brain. And that was really hard because I thought I could, I can handle anything that's like here, like neck down. But hearing it had spread to my brain was absolutely devastating. And then they took me in for MRI of my brain, and then that showed I had 30 to 35 tumors in my brain. And it was so overwhelming to me because I thought, like, I'm going to die. Like, this is going to kill me because it's in my brain. And when I was still in the hospital, they decided to start brain radiation right away. And so I completed brain radiation while I was still inpatient. And I did 5 rounds and then eventually went on to, um, getting out of the hospital and going to outpatient appointments and getting all set up with chemo. And I did 6 rounds of chemo, and I did 2 types of chemo drugs. And then also at the same time, I did Keytruda immunotherapy. And so that was really good to kind of push through all that. But unfortunately, chemo kind of kicked my ass. And after round 5, I ended up in the hospital. I was unresponsive and had like a flu-like symptoms. And my mom had to call the paramedics to come get me. And I ended up in sepsis and was just, I had like 2 or 3 blood transfusions when I got there, and it was horrible. I was in the ICU for 3 days and I don't remember any of it. I was completely like blacked out. And that's when I woke up from that finally and was transferred to a regular room, that's when I thought, like, this is it. Like, I think I'm gonna die. And so that, I've never in my life had that feeling except for then. I've never been so sick before. I think I thought I knew what sick was, but I had no idea. Like,
Yeah,
it was just so, overwhelming and extreme.
I
Uh,
imagine so. I mean, I've heard all different diagnosis stories and journeys, and I've got to say, this one seems like one of the hardest. I mean,
yeah.
really. So I know you said that, you chose to go to Iowa because your mom was there or your parents or whatnot. And I'm assuming that your mom or your mom and dad or whomever, you've got a team of people that are your caregivers. And caregivers are so, so important. We all know that. But as a young person at 30 years old and being, tech savvy as as the generation is, how did you go about when you finally you woke up and you're thinking, "Oh my gosh, this is gonna kill me." What happened next? Like, did you do research? How'd you advocate for yourself? Were they wanting just to be like, this is 6 to 12 months. You just take care of your affairs, have fun. What happened at that point? Once you've woken up and you're like, "Oh gosh, this is it."
Yeah, so up until then, I had never directly asked, like, how long I have or anything. And after that hospital stay, I went to Doctor Google and looked up survival rates for stage 4 lung cancer. And I was shocked to read what I read. And I thought I was reading it wrong because it's just so low. Like, I think it's like an average of 9% make it past 5 years. And so I thought that can't be right. And so I ended up at an appointment with my oncologist, and I just straight up directly asked, like, how long do I have to live? And he said, with your age and being prior really healthy and so resilient and all the hospital stays and everything, like, he's like, I plan to have you like live for years to come, which was really encouraging and really positive. But I also wanted to be realistic. And so I ended up talking to a palliative care doctor who confirmed the survival rates and just, assured me that, there's always, as you know, there's always like updates and changes to cancer research and medications, and that's always evolving, and that's fantastic. But I just wanted to, like I said, be realistic about what the odds are and how long I have. And she gave me like the best piece of advice that I had heard since being diagnosed. She said, if there's anything that you've wanted to do or you were waiting later in life to do it now. And then if you live past that 5 years, that's just a bonus. That really resonated with me.
That's great advice. I like that advice. So I'm impressed. Like, you thought to see a palliative care doctor. There's a lot of people that are like, "Ooh, that means that you're dying. You're actively dying." And I think you and I both know, and a lot of other people know that that's really not what palliative care means. It just means you have a terminal diagnosis and you're living with it, and they're there to assist you with that. It seems to me that you are being your own advocate during all this. Do you feel like who has been your biggest advocate? in this whole, this has only been since January. So what, we're in September. So we're talking 8-ish months. Is that right?
Yeah. 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 So I would say my mom has been my biggest advocate because, like I said, she had stage 3 colorectal cancer and she's already kind of navigated the system, especially here in Iowa, where I'm also receiving treatment. And she is very like prepared. Like when we go to appointments, she has a list of questions and she's very, if she's confused about something, like, she doesn't mind asking, like, "Hey, can you clarify this for me?" Or, "Can you repeat this?" And, "I'm confused about why this is this." And so she's been really extremely helpful. And, she I get kind of emotional because I know how much it's hard on her and it's hard for her to see me like this. And my mom is 61 years old, and at 61, she probably didn't think she was gonna have to take care of her daughter, like, in this way, like, as if I'm a
Right.
baby, kind of. So, yeah, so she's been the best.
Well, that's awesome. I think self advocacy is very important. Obviously, you do that for yourself as well, but then also having someone that can advocate for you. It's a bonus that she knows kind of the ropes because of her experience. For me, it was my husband. He is a cancer survivor. He was diagnosed with prostate cancer about 17 months before I was diagnosed with lung cancer, and he's good. He's in remission. But just him, kind of, I felt like I was such a blur, like mentally
Mhm,
and physically and emotionally, and just having somebody that's willing to like take their list of questions and find the answers. And because I do think that a lot of times just advocating for yourself or the person that you love is what gets them the best possible treatments and
mhm.
doctors that are available. So kudos to your mom. And I know, I mean, I'm probably closer to your mom's age than I am yours. And well, I definitely am. And I can't imagine as a mother what that's like, because all you want to do is keep your babies healthy and you want to fix it. And this isn't something she can fix. So my heart goes out to her for sure. I think this is an amazing story. I mean, what you've been through physically in these 8 months and that you're able to talk about it, I just think this is going to be so beneficial to our viewers. And as if you watch regularly the patient conversation series, this is really just our episode 1 with Clara. We'll come back for 2 and 3, hitting different topics. But if you are wanting to follow along to see what else we have to say, I think a little sneak peek for number 2 and 3 we'll probably talk about being like how this affects your mental wellness and also your physical being. So if you'd like to make sure you don't miss those, please like and follow us. And I want to say thank you, Clara, for being here this morning. It's an honor and a privilege to hear your story. I think this is something that a lot of people need to hear because 30 years old seems way too young for lung
Mhm.
cancer. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for your